So despite what these forever youthful looks may suggest, I am in fact older than 23. I am in fact quite a few years older than 23. But luckily for me, even at the age I am now, I am led to believe that I still have quite a few years left of my prime. If I was a professional footballer, however, this may not necessarily have been the case. And if I was a professional footballer of the attacking variety, this very possibly may not have been the case. And if I was a professional footballer of the attacking variety with not so favourable habits off the pitch, this very seldom would have been the case. Case in point, these guys. 7 footballers who reached their peak before 23. Since 2004, cause obviously. Let's roll on. Honourable mention, Wayne Rooney. I personally thought he was at his best pre-23, maybe even pre-21. Basically before the second time he broke his foot. But fact is, he simply had too good of a career since then to make this list. So consequently, man like Wazza will have to do with an honourable mention. These fellas on the other hand. Number 7, Huss Rodriguez. A Real Madrid youth graduate who patiently waited for his opportunity, was finally given a run of games in the first team, repaid the manager's faith by bagging in El Clasico, continued making every opportunity count by bagging 4 goals and 4 assists in the next few months, and then damaged his ACL in a UCL game at 21 years of age. He returned 9 months later, but as you'd have probably guessed by now, he was never quite the same again. And listen, it was only as I was writing up the script for this video that I realized that Huss actually never played for Spain. And bro, if you remember him tearing up teams before his injury like I do, you'd be pretty shocked at that too. And by the way, don't get me wrong, he still did fairly well post that tear. He actually played a pretty crucial part in Real's UCL run in 2016. But for someone who reminded a few people of CR7 when on the sprint, CR7, he was not. Number 6, James Rodriguez. Another J Rodriguez whose progress was halted around a similar time to the J Rodriguez we just spoke about, as well as another J Rodriguez who was at Southampton around this time. And weirdly enough, not only are none of them related, they're also all from different countries. The more you know, eh? Okay, so this is kind of a running theme on this list. No, not the J Rodriguez thing, but the fact that none of these guys, apart from maybe one, actually completely fell off the earth post 23. Like hell, in the case of James, he was the best player in a major tournament as recently as last summer. But even still, I don't think too many people can deny that the 2014 World Cup was where it really peaked for the guy. Because following that golden boot, he made a move to Real Madrid where they tried to shoehorn him into a counter-attacking setup where in order to excel as an attacker, you either had to be the deep-lying dictator/destroyer type or someone who was quick on the break. James wasn't any of those things. And despite him still doing well for himself, the side still suffered partly due to his integration, and on a personal level, that was about as good as it got. Number 5, Jack Wilshere. From bossing arguably the greatest midfield trio ever at 19, to struggling to get a game for West Ham United at 26, all the way to playing his final game before his 30th birthday. And as sad as that was, and as sad as this is to say, Jack Wilshere was basically a symbolic representation of the Arsenal sides during the latter Wenger years. Relatively small, technically gifted, capable of magic, but at the same time very injury prone, perceived to be a little weak-minded, though I don't think that's fair, and ultimately couldn't really quite cut it with the big boys. And much like many before him, it all began with one injury, in Jack's case is his ankle, which he never really fully recovered from. But still man, that shouldn't take away from what he was capable of on his day early on in his career. Like remember when Pep said this? Right before Jack ran rings around his midfield at the Emirates? Made him look like a right twat, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, and speaking of looking like a right twat, Mario Balotelli won't be on this list by the way, in case anyone was wondering. I never really rated him that highly, and I actually think his peak was about 24, basically just before he came to Liverpool when whatever the fuck happened. So that means the slot of a skillful soccer star with a slightly insubstantial and not so stellar run who's the namesake of a simulated superhero from the south of Sicily will instead go to number 4, Mario Götze. So it seems like if you're a top class player at Dortmund in the past dozen or so years and your name isn't Marco Reus, you will at one point at least try to join Bayern. It just feels like the most logical step at this point. You know, it's like primary school to secondary school, or rather Southampton to Liverpool, or Chelsea to an EDL rally, Manchester City City to court, Manchester United to Real Madrid, Manchester United to someone's bed you probably shouldn't be in. But much like all those moves, Dortmund to Bayern isn't always guaranteed to work out. And sadly for Mario Götze, who made this move when he was 22, it never really seemed right. However, blaming the man's downfall solely on this move, to be fair, won't be fair either. Mario Götze has actually had hip problems since he was 19 years old, but when he was younger and had less miles on him, it just didn't affect him as much. And due to his undeniable talent, he reached some notable heights early on in his career in spite of those underlying issues. And by the time he made that move to Bayern in 2014, he'd already won Bundesliga, reached a UCL final, destroyed Real Madrid, and most notably of them all, came on as a sub in the World Cup final and scored the winning goal. But then, not too long after that, Götze began to lose his pace and sharp movement, which at one point led some to label him as the next Messi. Yeah, right. And unfortunately, much like James, the summer of 2014 ended up being as good as it got. But hey, that's pretty f***ing good, isn't it? I mean, he clearly thinks so. Number 3, Adriano. Wow. So this list is basically tailor-made for this guy, right down to the f***ing title. Like, bro, the guy began going downhill almost literally as he turned 23. And listen, if you even heard the first thing about this guy, it's not hard to figure out why. Partially. Because I'm afraid to say, the story isn't as straightforward as it seems. Because you see, despite having the propensity for trouble even early on, Adriano was on the right track for quite a while in the beginning of his career, and actually earned a move to Italy when he was just 19. And after spending 2 years at Parma where he became established, he returned to Inter Milan, the Italian club that initially signed him, in January 2004, seemingly ready to take over the world. And for a very short while, he seemed to be doing just that, as he not only went on to finish the 03-04 season very strongly with Inter, but also lifted the Copa America with Brazil that summer as top scorer. But then, just a mere few days after his Copa triumph, his father passed away. And, you guessed it, he was never quite the same again. And listen, I'm saying this despite Adriano, even after his pops' death, still having 1 or 2 very good seasons and subsequently making the 06 World Cup squad for Brazil. No small feat at the time considering who they had available. But eventually, his bad habits, which unsurprisingly multiplied following his father's death, did end up catching up to him. And the man who was once hailed as the next Ronaldo was pretty much done in Europe by 27. And from then on, cue divorces, drunken disorderly, shootings, drug trafficking, and all in all, a car wreck of a post-playing career. But having said that though, he's still only 42, and while that is too late for a football comeback, the man still, hopefully, has a lot of life to live, and let's indeed hope he lives it well. Number 2, Michael Owen. Another one of those guys who this list seemed to be tailor-made for. Well, kind of. Because you see, in the case of Michael Owen, there are a couple of huge differences. Well, from Adriano, there's a world of difference. But even from the rest of the others. And to be fair, this makes it even more tragic because most, if not all the others, at least partly fell due to the bad habits off the pitch. Whereas for Owen, bro, forget f***ing drugs and alcohol issues. This bro don't even drink tea. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's the issue. F*** knows, man. Do you drink tea? I actually prefer coffee. Another difference with Michael Owen's case is that he's also probably the only player on this list that peaked not just before 23, but before he was probably even out of his teens. Cause check this, by the time Michael Owen reached his 20th birthday, he already won 2 Premier League Golden Boots, scored a wonder goal against Argentina in the World Cup, had pretty much become the first choice striker for England at a time where they had an embarrassment of riches in that position, and had already passed 50 goals for Liverpool, all before 20. And then, when he was merely a few months shy of his 20th birthday, he damaged his hamstring at Leeds. And again, despite changing his game to great effect, and thus going on to still bang hat-tricks in Munich, races in cup finals, scoring in World Cups, and even bagging a Ballon d'Or, which still all happened before 23. Just saying, the muscle imbalances from 20 onwards meant that it was near on impossible for him to be the player he was in his teens. And well, I'm sure even Michael will tell you himself that despite the no small feats of success he achieved in his early 20s, he truly was never the same again. I mean, how do you beat that? Well, I'll tell you how. Because you see, despite winning it while he was already past his prime, as I said, Michael Owen to this day remains the second youngest person to ever win the Ballon d'Or. So, the only way to beat the second youngest Ballon d'Or winner in a list spotlighting promising prospects prospering and peaking in performance prematurely is pretty plain and simple. By picking the youngest Ballon d'Or winner. And that brings us to number 1, Ronaldo. Yeah, no, regardless of how surprising a couple of other entries may have been, regardless of what I myself have said about him in other videos, there's only one right answer for number 1. Cause yes, while I believe him getting GOAT shouts is beyond ridiculous, the fact that he does get those shouts despite never being the same again post 23 should tell you just how good he was pre 23. And although I've used this phrase quite a few times before, I'm not sure there's ever been a more fitting time to say, man, what could have been. And that is that. Agree or disagree beats indifference. So what do you think of this list? Are there any other notable footballers who peaked before or at 23 since 2004 that I missed out? Let me know in the comments below. And as usual, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Till next time, you keep rolling.